皆様おはようございます。Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. Thank you for joining Time to Act Forum 2023, Energy Decarbonization towards the Accelerated Implementation of Renewable Energies in Cities. Today's forum is organized by the Tokyo Metropolitan Government with support from ICLEI and C40. My name is Uchida Togo from ICLEI Japan office, and I am pleased to be the moderator of this forum today. Kickoff session of the Time to Act Forum was convened at February 2021 as a means to speed up climate action at a time of overcoming the COVID-19 crisis. Since then, Time to Act Forum has been able to play an important role in attracting influential and key speakers from around the world to share the most updated climate actions to the audience both domestically and internationally. Today, we will again have a great lineup of speakers from across the globe sharing activities and thoughts on how we can secure a sustainable future by expanding renewable energy utilization and accelerating climate actions. I would like to kick off today's forum by inviting Mr. Nakamura Rinji, the Vice Governor of Tokyo, to give an opening speech. Vice Governor Nakamura, the floor is yours.
Hello everyone, I'm Nakamura Rinji, Vice Governor of Tokyo. Thank you very much for participating in the Time to Act Forum 2023 today. There is no time to lose in addressing the climate crisis. Under the Time to Act slogan, the Tokyo Metropolitan Government is calling for accelerated actions in collaboration with a variety of stakeholders around the world. We launched an international network, GNET, Global City Network for Sustainability, last year, with the aim of solving urban issues and held a Leaders Summit in February this year under the concept of Sustainable High City Tech Tokyo, or SUSHI-TECH Tokyo for short. In the field of measures for buildings, we have had a cooperative relationship with the city of Kuala Lumpur in particular since 2019 and won the C40 Cities Bloomberg Philanthropies Award last year together. Today, Mayor Kamal Zaman will also give a speech later. The theme of the forum this time is energy decarbonization. I would like to focus on renewable energy, among others, as an important option to achieve both decarbonization and energy security. Let me conclude my opening remarks with the hope that the discussion will be fruitful. Thank you.
Thank you, Vice Governor Nakamura. Next in the program, we have a video message from Gino van Begin, the Secretary General of ICLEI, Local Governments for Sustainability. Please.
Good morning and good evening. My name is Gino van Begin, and I'm the Secretary General of ICLEI, Local Governments for Sustainability. I would like to thank Governor Koike for inviting me to speak at this very important event, the Time to Act Forum 2023. The Time to Act Forum, which is hosted by the Tokyo Metropolitan Government, has taken up the most appropriate issues of the moment on timely occasions of the past 3 iterations, and has provided important input in domestic as well as international discourses. Last year's forum focused on the topic of hydrogen. The results were reported by Governor Koike to heads of states and international organizations at a high-level roundtable at COP27. As ICLEI, we are very happy that we have been able to support Tokyo since the inaugural edition of this forum, and also to support Governor Koike's participation at the COP. Esteemed participants and guests, the year 2023 marks the conclusion of the first global stocktake process under the Paris Agreement. The result is clear. We are far from achieving the global commitment to limit the temperature rise to 1.5 degrees Celsius. And in order to raise our ambition further to achieve the Paris goals, we need to deepen our collaboration at all governmental sectors and levels. The year 2023 also marks the midway to the 2030 Agenda and the SDGs. Results here are also grim. With the effect of the Russian aggression towards Ukraine, people globally are suffering from the rise of food and energy costs. Severe climate-related hazards are affecting the lives of many, especially those of the most vulnerable countries and communities. In this time of crisis, local governments operating closest with and to its citizens are at the forefront of many challenges. While responding to the crisis, cities are expected to move forward and to transform their economy and society to a sustainable one. However, cities alone will not accomplish this enormous challenge. It is therefore significant and very important that the Japanese government, as this year's G7 presidency, is strongly promoting the importance of the role of local governments in sustainable development globally. In Japan, nearly 1,000 Japanese local governments, including Tokyo, are pledging to achieve zero carbon emissions by 2050. Many are also committed to the SDGs and have set ambitious biodiversity targets. Japan shows that difficult challenges can be addressed effectively through strong leadership by the local governments and the national government working hand in hand. This is a model of multi-level collaboration that we would like other countries to follow. In this context, Tokyo, as an international metropolis, is making a very positive impact both domestically and internationally under the leadership of Governor Koike, through the formulations of ambitious goals and the implementation of new projects. This year's forum, under the theme of Energy Decarbonization, comes at the right timing before COP28 in Dubai. Discussions at the local level are essential for all of us to raise ambition to achieve the global sustainability goals. And we believe this is the essence of the global stocktake, which will conclude at COP28. We're also delighted to see that for the very first time ever, local governments will have a seat at the table during the World Climate Action Summit on December the 1st, and a special Local Climate Action Summit will be convened on December the 2nd. We're also pleased to see that on December the 6th, we will have a thematic focus on cities and will convene the second ministerial meeting on climate and urbanization at a COP. Together with our own activities at the Multi-Level Action and Sustainable Urbanization Pavilion, which ICLEI is convening this year in partnership with UN Habitat at the Blue Zone of the COP, we are expecting hundreds of local government leaders together in COP28 to raise voices on local challenges and innovations. I wish you all very fruitful deliberations and a successful Time to Act 2023 forum. Thank you very much for your kind attention and greetings from Bonn.
Great. Thank you for showing the video from Secretary General Gino van Biggen. Now, I would like to move on to the keynote speeches. And first, we have a video message from Mr. Francesco La Camera, the Director General of the International Renewable Energy Agency. Please.
Ladies and gentlemen, distinguished participants, I am pleased to have the opportunity to address such an important gathering today at the Time to Act Forum 2023. And I would like to thank the Tokyo Metropolitan government for the invitation. We stand at a pivotal moment in history, a moment where we must act decisively over the coming 7 years toward 2030 and beyond in the pursuit of a more sustainable future. Cities hold special significance in the move to decarbonize the energy sector and to meet critical climate objectives. They are home to more than half of the global population. They are engines of the economy, but also major energy consumers and emitters of greenhouse emissions. And they are increasingly suffering from the consequences of an unsustainable energy system. Cities can and must be key actors in the energy transition. They will need to accommodate 2/3 of the world's population in a livable, low-carbon environment by 2050. Accelerated uptake of locally produced renewables can strengthen the urban economy, create new jobs, and improve people's living conditions and welfare. Many are already leading the way. I commend the Tokyo Metropolitan government for its dedication to decarbonization and its ambitious goals of halving greenhouse gas emissions by 2030 and achieving zero emissions by 2050. Cities like Tokyo are demonstrating how local action can catalyze the shift to a low-carbon future, supporting regional and national governments in achieving sustainable energy targets and inspiring other cities to follow suit. Future urban infrastructure must span the full spectrum of energy uses, including power, heating and cooling, building, and transport. Smart grids linked to electric vehicles, energy storage, and intelligent energy management are crucial to integrate high share of solar and wind power in synergy with other renewable sources. Tokyo's commitment to green hydrogen, as outlined in the Tokyo Hydrogen Vision, stands out as a noteworthy example. According to IRENA's 1.5 Celsius scenario, hydrogen is expected to increase from today's negligible levels to comprise 14% of global final energy consumption by 2050. In the pursuit of accelerating the energy transition, renewables-based electricity generation is crucial, with IRENA's 1.5 Celsius scenario envisioning variable renewable energy accounting for 70% of global energy generation by 2050. Green hydrogen plays a pivotal role in harnessing this potential, requiring a systemic approach that includes infrastructure development, policy and regulation refinement, and innovative business models. Cities, as seen during the Tokyo 2020 Olympics and Paralympic Games, can lead in developing hydrogen applications within society. So, distinguished participants, IRENA has been at the forefront of efforts to accelerate the global energy transition toward renewables-centered energy systems, working closely with our global membership. IRENA has worked closely with Japanese G7 presidency this year to agree on a collective increase of 150 gigawatts of offshore wind and 1 terawatt of solar PV by 2030. With Japan's leadership and the leadership of Tokyo, we can work together to make meaningful and substantial progress. The upcoming COP28 in Dubai later this year provides a crucial platform for further discussions. Let me echo the sentiment that resonates throughout this forum. It is indeed time to act. I wish you all a successful and productive discussion, and I thank you for your commitment to shaping a more sustainable energy future for all.
Thank you very much. That was a great keynote speech from Director General Francesco La Camera. I would like to thank and express my gratitude for sending such a message to us. Our next keynote speaker is Dr. Ali Izadi, who is the head of Asia Pacific for Bloomberg NEF. Please welcome. So Dr. Izadi has traveled from South Korea today to join us today. So please, Dr. Izadi, the floor is yours.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you very much for the kind introduction. And I would like to express my gratitude for the Tokyo Metropolitan Government for organizing this important event. Those of you who are based in Tokyo would very much recognize this chart. We had an exceptionally hot summer this year. And unfortunately, even in October, where this is the time you should be enjoying the beautiful koyo, the beautiful red leaves, we still are experiencing fairly hot temperatures. In fact, globally, we are experiencing record temperatures. Globally, the average surface temperature in September was almost 1.7 degrees above the pre-industrial levels. Now, if you may remember, the goal of the Paris Agreement is to keep the average global surface temperature rise to well below 2 degrees. Now, to be fair, there are monthly variations, and right now we're experiencing some of this due to the El Niño-La Niña cycle. So we do expect that temperatures will eventually go down, but already off of that 2 degrees Celsius above pre-industrial levels, we have experienced over 1.1 degrees. So you're fast running out of time. And the good news is, as you're all aware, and we're in Japan today, many governments around the world, from municipal level to provincial levels to national levels and supranational levels, have committed to decarbonization. As of now, over 90% of global greenhouse gas emissions are covered by long-term decarbonization goals. For example, Japan's net zero by 2050, China's carbon neutrality before 2060, or India's before 2070. So the good news is that we have really good targets. The question is, how are we going to realize these targets? Now, if we want to realize a target, we first have to start with a vision. In 2018, IPCC's special report on global warming of 1.5 degrees Celsius gave us a very good blueprint. That blueprint was, as soon as possible, we have to reach peak emissions, and then we'll have to zero out those greenhouse gas emissions. Now, the earlier we reach peak emissions, the more time we have. The later we reach peak emissions, the faster we will have to reduce those emissions. Now, today, the good news is, thanks to improvements in cost of technologies such as renewable power and electric vehicles, we are already at the precipice of reaching peak emissions. So already before the end of this decade, even if we don't do any additional policy intervention, if we just let economics dictate the transition, we do expect that we'll reach peak emissions. The challenge, though, is that if we just let techno-economics dictate the pace, then we're probably looking at temperature rises of well above 2 degrees Celsius. If we want to hit the Paris Agreement target, we got to accelerate reaching the peak emissions and then reach net zero globally by 2050. To do that, we have to rely on clean power first and foremost. So between now and 2050, more than half of the emission abatement will have to come from clean electricity on the supply side. We also have to increase the share of electrification in final energy use. So this is about heat pumps, this is about electric vehicles. Of course, there will be sectors of the economy where we cannot electrify. Those we will have to rely on things like clean hydrogen or carbon capture and storage. Now, of course, every country's situation is very different. For example, today, France gets almost all of its electricity from zero-emission sources. So it means in the case of France, emission abatement will mostly come from increasing the share of electrification in final energy use. In the case of China or India, still coal dominates the power supply, so they will have to deploy a lot more renewables, while at the same time increase the share of electricity in final energy use. In the case of Japan, unfortunately, since a significant amount of the nuclear power has been offline, despite the rapid deployment of renewables we saw in the last decade, we're still very far from a zero-emission power supply that Japan needs. So Japan will need to accelerate both deployments of renewables as well as bring nuclear back online, while at the same time accelerate electrification of final energy use. That electrification mix will be very different by country. Some of this is just natural endowment. Australia is a very big country with low population density. It has very good insulation in terms of the level of solar, but also has very good wind resources. So that means it can do it mostly with renewable power, with a little bit of carbon capture and storage. In the case of Japan, as an island country, thousands of islands, relatively good solar and wind potential, but still high population density, quite a lot of mountainous regions and forest cover. That means renewables alone will not be enough, so we do need to see a role, for example, for nuclear power. Of course, when it comes to industry, transport, as well as buildings, beyond electricity, we will need other forms of energy. In the case of industry, already we use a diverse set of energy sources, and we will continue to rely on fossil fuels, particularly as feedstocks, for example, for producing petrochemicals. In transport, road transport can be electrified almost 100%, but for aviation and shipping, we will need other solutions such as sustainable aviation fuels or clean methanol for shipping. For buildings, again, electricity will be the main vector. In some circumstances, if you have clean heat sources, then central heating could be a good option to pursue. We've talked a little bit about the vision. Once you have a vision, of course, we have to define a plan. And plans need to be realistic, otherwise they're useless. What that means in terms of realistic plans, the first step is we should accelerate deployment of the technologies we already have. Solar panels, wind turbines, electric vehicles, heat pumps. These are technologies that are already very available and can be scaled up quite rapidly. The second step is we do need to consider the new technologies we're going to need, for example, for green steel, for green cement. But we also have to manage the transition for heavy emitting industries. We also need to consider the jobs that are tied to sectors that are going to be heavily affected by the transition. If we want an orderly transition, we need to make sure all economies, all people can be brought along. And finally, we need to have a governance for the transition. This is particularly true when it comes to transition finance. On the technologies, I've already repeated this many times. I just want to put this chart up again to show you the significant progress we have seen in bringing down the cost of solar, wind, and batteries for electric vehicles. Even though, yes, it is true, in the last 18 months, we did have inflationary pressures as a result of supply chain disruptions because of the pandemic, but also Russia's invasion of Ukraine. We have seen that most of those disruptions have now been resolved, and we're back to costs going down. Today, in over 80% of the world, if you're building a new power plant on a levelized cost basis, renewables are the cheapest option. There are some exceptions still, but those exceptions, we believe, within this decade will be resolved. One of the areas that I do want to highlight, given that we're in Japan, when it comes to plans, we do need to be realistic about our plans. And I apologize for being very blunt. We're not going to be able to decarbonize coal power plants by replacing coal with something like clean ammonia. It will be extremely expensive if we try to replace coal usage as a baseload power supply by replacing it with clean ammonia. In some cases, coal power plants will be economically decarbonized using carbon capture and storage, but a fuel like clean ammonia, just based on thermodynamics, will be very difficult to replace the role that coal plays today. This one, for those of you who are interested, this is a white paper. You're more than welcome to look it up. There's a lot more details in the white paper. In Japan, we also still hear a lot about the debate between hydrogen and electricity. In reality, the usage of clean hydrogen for decarbonization is very different than electricity. Road transport will be electric. Now we can continue spending time having this debate, but from a techno-economic perspective, the debate has already been won by battery electric vehicles. Hydrogen will have clear advantages over electricity, for example, when it comes to green steel production. Yes, for secondary steel, meaning recycling, clean electricity will be critical. But if you want to produce primary steel from iron ore, in many locations you will have to rely on hydrogen direct reduction of the iron ore as a replacement for using coking coal. Similarly, if you're looking at decarbonization of aviation and shipping, we will need clean molecules. Some of those will be produced from clean hydrogen. In the case of Japan, again, electricity, clean electricity will be the critical vector. We also see a role for carbon capture and storage. But clean hydrogen for Japan will be very challenging, partly because if you want to produce clean hydrogen, in the case of Japan, Japan doesn't have any fossil fuels. That means you can't produce blue hydrogen domestically. If you want to do green hydrogen domestically, then you run into the renewable resource potential challenges that many like to highlight. Now, the limited renewable resource potential that Japan has will need to be prioritized for direct use as electricity. There will be still some opportunities to use fossil fuels with CCS. Now, you may wonder, well, what about importing blue hydrogen? The challenge with that is it's a lot cheaper to bring coal or LNG to Japan and then do CCS, rather than bringing blue hydrogen. Hydrogen, unfortunately, has a very low volumetric energy density. That means we're not going to be able to replicate the energy supply chains we have today for coal, oil, and LNG using seaborne shipping. This is just, again, technologically, from fundamentals perspective, not feasible. Regardless of how much you believe that cost can be calmed down, you can't resolve the lower volumetric energy density issues with hydrogen. The third thing we need to consider is, of course, engaging all stakeholders. And here I would like to commend the Tokyo Metropolitan government, Vice Governor Nakamura, as well as Governor Koike for doing a fantastic job. All levels of government, civil society, financial industry, and companies need to be involved. Now, unfortunately, in many countries, there's a tendency to do a top-down approach. If you do a top-down approach alone, then you're not going to get the buy-in from local stakeholders. Whether we are talking about offshore wind or rooftop solar, we still need to make sure that local stakeholders are fully engaged and bought in to deployment of the technologies that we need in. Finally, we do need to raise the funding necessary for the transition. Now, in our scenarios around hitting the Paris Agreement goal, we estimate that we're going to need just under $200 trillion of investment in the energy infrastructure, both on the supply side and the demand side. $200 trillion may seem like a lot of money, but in reality, it represents annual share of GDP that we already do invest in energy infrastructure. It's mostly about a reallocation. And the good news is that if you look at the financial institutions that have signed on to the Glasgow Alliance for Net Zero, GFANZ, those entities already manage assets of roughly over $130 trillion. So we do have the pot of money needed. It's about allocating it. When you look at annual investment in energy transition, the good news is that we have seen investment annually increase. And last year was the first year we saw that annual investment exceed $1 trillion. The challenge is the growth is not geographically uniform. China is doing the heavy lifting. Of the 1.1 trillion invested last year, about half of it was in China. If you look at Japan, as the third largest economy in the world, I'm sorry to say this, it's not pulling its weight. The other issue we need to remember is that if we want to have an orderly transition, we can't just say, let's stop investing in fossil fuels, let's zero that out immediately. Sometimes we hear this, particularly from NGOs. The problem if we do that is if we have not increased the investment in the low carbon energy supply and we just accelerate divestment from fossil fuels, then essentially we're going to create an energy crisis. We do need to continue investment in fossil fuels. We just need to do it in an orderly fashion, keeping in mind our plan for the transition. Yes, we may need less investment in fossil fuels, but this should be done coupled with an increased investment in the low carbon supply. If you just do one side of it without the other side, you're basically going to create an energy crisis, and that's not the way that we want to deal with, and already we have had a preview of that with Russia's invasion of Ukraine. On that note, what we need to see is we need to go globally from the current ratio, which is around $1 invested in low carbon supply for every dollar invested in fossil fuel supply, to a ratio of 4 by the end of this decade, and then doubling that ratio the next decade, and then eventually being in double-digit ratios in 2040s. I would like to conclude by quoting again the motto for this event: it's time to act. We do have all the pieces needed to solve the problem. We just need to act on them. Thank you very much for your kind attention. This concludes my presentation.
Thank you very much, Dr. Izari. It was a very comprehensive and very interesting presentation you have just presented, I think, which is a reminder of how it is important that we always look back at the scientific data and statistics and also reflect that to our policies. And as Japanese citizens, I think we have a lot of work to do in reflecting what you have just presented just now. So thank you very much for that. I think this keynote speech is very valuable and have worked very well to set the scene for the next part of our program, which is the panel discussion, where we will have our guest engaged in discussions to discuss about how we actually can accelerate renewable energy in cities. So I would like to invite the panelists to the stage. So please come on stage. Thank you very much.座る順番がちょっとあれですよね。 Okay, thank you very much. So as you can see, we have a great panel today from a variety of backgrounds and responsibilities. And in this session, we hope to have hear from the panelists the prospects on accelerating renewable energy in cities from different perspectives and obtain our understanding, deepening our understanding on how we could accelerate the renewable energies at the level of cities. So allow me to quickly introduce the panel. So first, His Excellency Mr. Jan-Erik Take, Ambassador Extraordinary and Plenipotentiary of the European Union of Japan. Next, Ms. Kaori Miyake, Co-Chair of the Japan Climate Leaders Partnership, JCLP, and Executive Manager of ESG Planning and Promotion Departments, Sumitomo Mitsui Trust Bank Limited. Next, we have Nakamura Rinji, Vice Governor of Tokyo. Next, we have Datuk Suri Haji Kamarul Zaman bin Matsare, Mayor of Kuala Lumpur. And then we have Mr. Mohammed Al-Dalawi, Ministry of Investment of Saudi Arabia, Representative for Japan and Saudi Japan Vision 2030 Office Representative. And in addition to the panelists on the stage, we will be showing a special video message from Her Excellency Ambassador Nina Hajigan, US Special Representative for City and State Diplomacy. So, esteemed guests, let's get started. So for the first round of panel discussion, I would like to ask the panelists to introduce their initiatives and actions to accelerate the implementation of renewable energy. So, Vice Governor Nakamura, if I may, I would like to start from you. So, Tokyo has led the world in environmental policies and declared its target to become zero carbon by 2050, ahead of many nations and local governments. In the field of renewable energy, I know Tokyo has an ambitious vision. At the same time, we have a global energy challenge. And in this context, could you tell us how you consider the energy problem in today's world and how you are tackling this with renewable energy initiatives in Tokyo? Please.
Thank you, Mr. Uchida. Weather disasters such as floods and forest fires frequently occur around the world. We have all witnessed these extreme events. At the same time, the global energy crisis is becoming increasingly aggravated and prolonged. To overcome these two major challenges, the climate crisis and energy crisis, the climate crisis and energy crisis, the world needs to tackle them by sharing knowledge and working together. Tokyo has set goals and of realizing a 2030 carbon half, a plan to halve carbon emissions, and 2050 zero emission Tokyo. Renewable energy is an important key to achieving zero emission. It is essential to decarbonize by making renewable energy a major energy source. Let me introduce the initiative unique to Tokyo. Over 70% of CO2 emissions in Tokyo come from energy used in buildings, and buildings will remain in use for decades. Houses to be built from now on are expected to account for 60 to 70% of all houses in 2050. In light of these characteristics of Tokyo, we have established an audience that requires mainly house builders to install solar power systems on new houses. The system will start in April 2025. We will also strengthen the urban cap-and-trade program Tokyo introduced in 2010, ahead of the rest of the world. We are planning to significantly increase the CO2 compliance factors for large facilities and further encourage the use of renewable energy. Under the goal, energy crisis, the first thing that can be done is to save, generate, and store electricity. The Tokyo Metropolitan Government is using the Japanese abbreviation HTT to develop a campaign to change the behavior of individual Tokyo residents, such as optimizing the room temperature when using air conditions and cool biz, which encourages wearing lighter clothing in the office during summer. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Vice Governor Nakamura. I have been following Tokyo's policy on solar panels becoming mandatory for new homes built after 2025, since this will have a big impact, and not only in Tokyo, but also elsewhere in Japan. But it might be very important to note that this kind of similar policy has been implemented in the leading cities around the world. So we have all coming to the similar conclusion in terms of what kind of policy is needed in terms of cities to become decarbonized. Thank you very much for that presentation. So I would like to move on to Mayor Datuk Zaman. Excuse me for my pronunciation. Thank you very much for traveling all the way to Tokyo from Kuala Lumpur. We are delighted to have you here. So Mayor, Kuala Lumpur was one of the first ASEAN cities to announce its intent to become carbon neutral by 2000, and it's currently leading the region in many fronts. So please tell us about what you and Kuala Lumpur is doing to reach carbon neutrality, especially in the field of renewable energy, please.
Thank you, Mr. Togo Uchida, for the kind introduction. Ohayo gozaimasu. Nama iwa kamaru zaman matsale desu. Kuala Lumpur no shisho desu. Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi ta'ala wa barakatuh, and a very good morning to one and all. Malaysia is aware of the global strategy for reducing carbon emissions since the Kyoto Protocol was adopted on 11 December 1997. We have been working with the world community to make Malaysia, especially Kuala Lumpur, a low carbon and carbon neutral nation. With a population of 1.8 million people spread across 243 square kilometers, Kuala Lumpur, as the capital of Malaysia, is the beating heart and part of our country, as well as one of the world's top cities. In our effort to build a livable and sustainable city, as well as carbon neutrality, we have created a number of different master plans to ensure that our action plans are in line with the most recent internationally sustainability best practices and standards. Kuala Lumpur City Hall has created a master plan to attain carbon neutrality called the Kuala Lumpur Climate Action Plan. This action plan consists of 5 strategies and 15 actions with 5 categories, namely energy, mobility, waste, green adaptive cities, and disaster management. We have developed low-carbon GSG building roadmap and outline targets. We also have low-carbon building roadmap. In this roadmap, we have targeting at least 30% of total buildings to meet minimum energy consumption. Target, and a zero performance standard implemented across 10% of new building. Okay. Ladies and gentlemen, in order to achieve our target on carbon neutrality, we have implemented energy efficiency as well as renewable energy in most of our facilities. This initiative has been prioritized and put forward by the Kuala Lumpur City Hall. Two infrastructure projects in blue will be supported under the C40 CFF in coordination with the third in green, which is supported by C40. This third project is focusing primarily on policy and regulatory support to the implementation of net zero emission building in Kuala Lumpur. One of the early initiatives done by Kuala Lumpur City Hall after receiving guidance from Japan was to install solar photovoltaic system in building and infrastructure owned by Kuala Lumpur City Hall. For instance, the community complex, bus stop, and hawker center. More importantly, there is a need to ensure that our climate action aligns with wider effort to become a more resilient city, which addresses inequalities and protect vulnerable and marginalized communities. Thus, the Kuala Lumpur Climate Action Plan 2050 is naturally the next step in our climate action journey. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Datuk Kamarul Zaman. Thank you very much for this initiative, and it's very encouraging to see a city like Kuala Lumpur, who is very influential in ASEAN countries, making a very bold and very huge progress in achieving zero carbon by 2050. Thank you very much for that. Now, I would like to share a video message from Ambassador Nina Hatchigan, the US Special Representative for City and State Diplomacy. Her position was newly established about a year ago. We find it very interesting to see that US is working to expand the scope of cities in the area of foreign diplomacy. Ambassador Hatchigan will share us the background of its establishment and how that is relevant for cities in the US responding to international challenges, including decarbonization, through actions such as implementing renewable energy projects. So please show the video.
It is my great pleasure to address this event. Many thanks to the Tokyo Metropolitan Government for the great organization. It is always special to be in the same space with Governor Koike in real life or even virtually. My name is Nina Hatchigan, and I'm the first special representative for city and state diplomacy at the U.S. Department of State. My team, the Subnational Diplomacy Unit at the State Department, was created a year ago as part of President Biden's foreign policy for the middle class. We have three main goals. First and foremost, we listen to mayors, governors, county, and other local officials to hear what they care about. And these conversations help us to connect these leaders closest with the people, with the tangible benefits of foreign policy. We learn a lot when we listen to local leaders because, as Secretary Blinken remarked at the U.S. Conference of Mayors, quote, cities are the engines of opportunity and ingenuity in the U.S. They're where challenges tend to emerge first and solutions are often forged the quickest, end quote. Second, we want to encourage mayors, governors, county, and other local officials to serve their constituents by engaging with the world and with us. We know that when mayors and other local leaders work internationally, they can bring investment, jobs, information, and ideas back to their residents. Third, we encourage our State Department colleagues all over the globe to connect and work with local leaders. Sometimes this subnational diplomacy, as we call it, is the best way to move forward on issues that we care about. We want our colleagues to always remember that local action remains key to effective solutions on many issues, especially in decarbonization. One of the best examples of that comes from the last time I was in Japan. During the summer of 2020, I was working as deputy mayor for the city of Los Angeles. And at that time, we signed an agreement between the city of Los Angeles and the city of Nagoya to decarbonize our ports together, sharing our knowledge. We also took a tour of the first hydrogen plant near Fukushima. This is what mayors, governors, and other local leaders can do. They are the real experts on the ground, the innovators, the implementers, and the keepers of knowledge about the best way to effectively solve problems. We see this clearly across the United States in cities' efforts to address the climate crisis. LA and New York are well-known, important examples, but there are many others. Burlington, Vermont has 100% of the city's grid electricity come from renewable sources. Tampa, Florida recently unveiled a climate action and equity plan, which includes greater use of solar power. Minneapolis, Minnesota is tripling its investment in decarbonization and focusing on weatherizing homes. Houston, Texas, in addition to increasing its reliance on geothermal, solar, and wind power, is investing in green stormwater infrastructure. Kansas City, Missouri is expanding its tree canopies in neighborhoods where they are most needed against heat. There are many other examples of decarbonization, green jobs, and resilience. Indeed, more than 120 American mayors have signed on to the city's Waste to Zero commitment. So in all, cities are not just sites of major carbon emissions, they are also innovators and essential, ambitious actors for mitigation and resilience. This is why I'm looking to further collaboration with subnational leaders in Japan and in all of our ally and partner countries toward raising our collective efforts to address the climate crisis. Thank you.
Thank you, Ambassador Hachikin. I think that was a reminder of how the importance of the city-to-city collaboration, how that can bring about a potential of projects to be implemented faster and larger scale if the local governments share their knowledge and experiences effectively. Thank you very much, Ambassador Hachikin. Now I would like to move on to Ambassador Paquet. Thank you very much for participating in today's forum. It's always great to have you here at the stage. While the EU has been a front line of climate policy, the recent energy price escalation have affected many, including people in EU. But even in this situation, EU have strengthened investment towards renewable energy, and I think you have even accelerated your transformation of energy source to renewables. So please tell us more about the situation of EU at the moment and how you are planning to move this and achieve the big goal that you have aiming for at EU. Thank you very much.
Togo, thank you very much for this opportunity. Good morning, everyone. Ohayo gozaimasu. And can I start by saying how impressed I was by the two keynote presentations, which I think were really absolutely spot on. And I already shared that with Ali Izadi. I was much impressed by the data which Bloomberg put across, because I don't think we can suspect Bloomberg of being an activist green NGO, and they have a lot to tell us as well. But I think the trajectories as they were set out demonstrate that this energy transformation and more generally this climate policy transformation, whilst disruptive and challenging politically, economically, financially, is absolutely practical and credible. So thank you very much for that data. I will certainly look at it again. And I was, if I can just say that, particularly struck by the ratio which you promote at the end between renewable energy investments and fossil investments. And the ratio is really I mean, the European ratio I knew, but the Chinese one is very impressive, but the East Asian one is also positive in the sense that it is going towards renewable energy, contrary to what we sometimes think or hear. And from that point of view, Mr. Mayor, what Kuala Lumpur does and also what Tokyo does illustrates that indeed a lot of these investments are taking place as we speak. Time to act has not yet passed, but we essentially, frankly, we are nearly there. So I think for me, the first thing I would like to underline is that it's now that it needs to be done. I think it's very important that we all have 2050 targets, because that is a long-term proper objective. But honestly, this is not what is important. What is today important, and the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change has been extremely clear, and this is put forward by the United Nations, but of course also by the European Union, is we need to peak in 25. not in 2030. Maybe that's one nuance I would put. We need to peak in 25. We are not on course. And we need to reduce emissions by 43% by 2030 if we are to credibly stay within the 1.5 degrees. And I think what we've witnessed over the summer shows us that we want to try and we should stay within the 1.5 degrees. That is a very, very tall order for all of us, including, of course, for the European Union as well. And I think what the European Union does is not to deploy a model which is better than any other. I think the interest of the European Union model is that it is here now. We've done it, and we have peaked many years ago. We've decoupled, in fact, CO2 emissions, which are going down very fast from GDP growth, which is an interesting illustration that this can be done. And we have, in over 20 years now, invested in a grid, in carbon pricing, and we have done that all with a legal framework which obliges public policies and actors across the European Union, which are in a very diverse situation. I think the point that different pathways are needed for different economies and geographies is very true, and we demonstrate it absolutely every day. Because the situation in some member states, for example in Scandinavia, is that electricity is essentially renewable, all of it, and exported as well. You can go then to other parts of Europe where the investments started later and where essentially these are still economies which are fossil fuel driven. So that is certainly a reality in Europe as well. But what the Europeans have done, and I will now come to your question, Togo, is to set a hard legal target, reduction of 55% of emissions by 2030. And from that hard target, all policies are deployed. So it's not that we just have the target. They oblige all other public policies in transport, in energy, in housing, in energy efficiency, and of course on the subject of today, in renewable energy deployment. And this is the European Green Deal, which is now fully in place in terms of formal structures. But as said, because we started these political and economic investments 25 years ago, it is now being deployed and accelerated. The Russian war of aggression on Ukraine and the energy crisis which ensued for Europe, we were dependent for our gas, more than 40% of our gas was coming from Russia, and this overnight became entirely unreliable and very fast unavailable. And that has meant that we were effectively deeply affected. And I think what has happened is, of course, Japan included, the US markets, and now also the Middle East have stepped in terms of LNG supplies. I think gas remains a key component, of course, of our energy mix, short and medium term. But we were also able to accelerate renewable energy deployment. We increased it by 50% in 22 against 21. And this, of course, cannot be done overnight. There was a pipeline here and there. A grid was becoming available, but we still increased by 50%. And we have now a trajectory where we hope to double our renewable energy by 2030 in line with the CO2 reduction objective. So this is happening here now. So indeed, it requires hard political attention. It requires investments. It requires, of course, also legal binding targets, at least in the European context. I think one very important dimension is also citizens. I think citizens in Europe are overwhelmingly worried that we don't act fast enough to deal with the climate crisis. Of course, across the European Union, our societies are also impacted by inflation, by economic hardship. So you need to get the balance right, and you need to act smartly by organizing the transformation and the social transformation. Disruptions do exist. We cannot ignore that. So we need also a socially just transition. But citizens are overwhelmingly keen to see it, also because they see life benefits to that transformation. A city with electricity is a city without pollution, without air pollution. That's what it is. When electricity is, of course, produced in a renewable manner and transportation systems are accordingly adopted. Citizens were also remarkable in this energy crisis after the Russian war of aggression. We have, in fact, increased our energy efficiency by 15%. So people have reduced, as you have done in Japan in 2011, we have reduced our household energy consumption massively. And you had a little bit the same interesting societal behavior we had in the COVID pandemic, where staying at home, mask wearing was certainly not European at all. But we did it collectively, and we were looking at each other and helping out. And the same then happened also for energy efficiency. So the notion that our societies can't be disrupted and then changed for the better is not correct. So I think that is also in Europe a message which is so important, which is carried by the younger generation, but across society. And this then empowers political leaders to make disruptive, bold decisions, which are never easy to make, neither in Europe nor anywhere else. So that's a little bit, in a nutshell, the European story. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Ambassador Paquet. I think I was also very much impressed about the keynote presentation by Dr. Izari, and how important that we always focus on the data and science and rationale of whatever the challenge that we are facing. And I guess the experience of EU shows how it is important to do that in a regular basis, so that even in the case of a situation of crisis, you are able to realign your policy in a more rational, more proactive way. Than perhaps maybe panicking a bit on a change that we are all facing. Right. Okay, thank you very much, Ambassador Paquet. I would like to move on to Mr. Mohammed Al-Dalawi. Thank you for joining us today. So as I understand, under Vision 2030, Saudi Arabia is planning on large-scale development projects such as the Red Sea project, and incorporating green energy technologies into these projects, which looks extremely interesting. From the perspective of the Ministry of Investment, who is promoting these projects, please share us more about Saudi Arabia's plan and green energy initiatives, please.
Thank you, Uchida-san, for your question. And again, I just want to, before I answer you, say that it's a pleasure to be with everyone, and special thanks to the governor and the vice governor for this amazing event. So following the launch of Vision 2030 in 2016, the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia has taken decisive action toward achieving a more sustainable future. And a few years ago, in 2021, the Saudi Green Initiative, we call it, or we named it SGI, unites environmental protection, energy transition, and sustainability program with the overarching aim of offsetting and reducing carbon emissions, increasing the kingdom's use of clean energy, and addressing climate change. And the goals are very ambitious, yet very clear. They are meant to achieve net zero emissions by 2060. And for the next decades, plant over 10 billion trees, in addition of including 50% of renewables, including solar and wind, within the national energy mix. A key comparative advantage of Saudi Arabia is its ideal location at the Sun Belt, where there is plenty of sunshine available across the region. And this is why Saudi Arabia is positioned globally number 6 in terms of having the potential to produce energy from the solar power. And when it comes to wind energy, Saudi Arabia's central and northeast and mountains of the western regions are located in the Hadley Cell, which also makes it have an excellent and promising potential to produce energy from the wind projects. One of the most promising and worth talking about projects about Saudi Arabia's renewable energy is having the largest battery storage facility in the world, established in the Red Sea project, as you see here in the slide. The Red Sea project is a tourism and hospitality infrastructure project where it will incubate over 50 hotels and over the size of 28,000 square kilometers. All of this project will be run actually on renewable energy, including solar and power. And for the battery storage itself, it will have a minimum capacity of 1,000 megawatt per an hour. And by the way, one of the main architects of this project is the famous architect Kengo Kuma. So I encourage everyone to, when you have time, to visit this Red Sea project. Such projects are happening everywhere in Saudi Arabia on the macro level and the micro level, and it's just a testimony of how serious Saudi Arabia takes the climate change issues and dedicated to deliver its national and global goals. Yes.
Thank you, Mohammed Al-Dalawi. Thank you very much for this introducing very interesting projects that you have. Now, for the last speaker for the first round, I would like to ask Ms. Miyake from JCLP and also Sumitomo Mitsui Trust Bank Limited. So you were selected to be on the UN high-level group of experts on net zero emission commitments of non-state entities, and took part in formulating the proposal that was announced at COP27 last year. Please tell us a little bit about the background of this proposal and how you have compiled this proposal. And based on this experience, how do you envision the role of non-state actors in promoting the renewable energy? Please.
Thank you. Thank you for introducing the high-level expert group from UN. This was about non-state actors' net zero commitment and the integrity of. The mandate was to define the integrity of the net zero commitment. So this recommendation, which was put out last year at the COP27, it has 10 recommendations for non-state actors when putting together a target and also the roadmap for that target. So it was more about principles and not exactly how-to sort of guidelines. So it does not talk about renewables per se, but the most important message, one of the most important message, is I think the importance of 1.5 degrees. Yes, the Paris Agreement says that we'll be below 2 degrees, but we all, at the moment, are trying to target 1.5 degrees alive. And as for the non-state actors as well, we all agreed in the recommendation states that we have to keep 1.5 alive. And also the other part was the importance of science. As Dr. Isley's keynote speech, we have to make sure that our targets and the roadmaps are aligned to 1.5 degrees from a science point of view as well. So that was a very important message included in the recommendation. Another big role for non-state actors was the policy engagement part. Yes, there's a lot of things non-state actors, including corporations like myself, and also the local governments can do for themselves. But they also have to make sure to work together with the different parties, including the national government. So one of the roles that was put on NSA was to work towards the local government. From my side, corporations should influence and talk to local governments as well as the national governments in terms of the policy as well. So that was one of the important roles that was put in the recommendation. Let me put it there.
Thank you, Ms. Miyake. I think that also sheds a different perspective of, we have no longer question on the urgency of acting on climate actions, but the question about integrity and how we secure the quality of our action is something that I think is reflected. And as my Secretary General mentioned in the opening speech, the global stocktake process have definitely taken into their consideration of your recommendation. And I think the world is looking towards how we could, at the same time, speed up but raise the quality of our climate action. So I think that was very interesting. Thank you very much. So let us move on to a second round. And in this round, I would like to each of you to share your opinion on the future prospects of renewable energy deployment and the role of cities in this transition. And this time, I would like to start from Datuk Kamarul Zaman. I would like to start from you. So to become carbon neutral by 2050, what initiatives will you like to especially focus on? And what kind of policies are you interested to put forward? Please.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Toko Ushida again. Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, the policies and regulatory that have been set by the government of Malaysia, as mentioned in this slide, serve as the foundation for all effort and initiative toward low carbon and carbon neutrality. In preparing our buildings toward net zero buildings, we are following UBBL 2021 and MS 1525 2019, energy efficiency and use of renewable energy for non-residential buildings. Kuala Lumpur City Hall, as for now, has already developed our pilot project for carbon neutrality. Wangsa Maju becomes the first carbon neutral growth center in Kuala Lumpur. The Wangsa Maju Carbon Neutral Growth Center focuses for 5 key areas, namely energy, mobility, community, green and open space, and waste. Kuala Lumpur City Hall, as the building owners, has installed solar photovoltaic system at community complexes, bus stop, hawker center, and market in this area. More than 85% of the street lights in Kuala Lumpur have been replaced and are now powered by LED light. This puts us on track with the aim to achieve 100% energy efficient street light in Kuala Lumpur by 2023. Other companies in Kuala Lumpur have started to install solar PV system on their structures. With this spirit, we hope that awareness and effort toward carbon neutrality for Kuala Lumpur can be executed. We have also identified several lakes in Kuala Lumpur which have potential to be installed with floating solar PV. To ensure a comfortable commute in an eco-friendly setting, our free Go KL electric buses, 78 in total, are currently operating in Wangsa Maju, providing reliable, easily accessible, and safe first and last mile service for the public. Apart from utilization of electric vehicles, we also encourage public toward a healthy lifestyle by contracting an integrated pedestrian walkway and bicycle lane network with shady trees throughout the city. Kuala Lumpur City Hall roughly decreased carbon emission by 32 kilotons of carbon dioxide, which is comparable to 1,900 city mature trees as a result of our effort in renewable energy. To achieve carbon neutrality, we need everyone's support, and we need to do this together. A concerted effort of relevant agencies, stakeholders, and most importantly, our global community to work together in reducing the impact of climate change is crucial. Is it only through the support from everyone we will be able to become a carbon neutral city by 2050 and play our part to sustain an equitable future 1.5 degrees of Celsius aligned world. Thank you.
Datuk Kamarul Zaman, thank you very much. I really like that you've pointed out the point is visibility. And a city like Kuala Lumpur, who is still growing very fast, I think you are implementing multiple projects and making a project visible and obtaining support from citizens. And I think it's extremely important. Thank you very much for that example. Next, I would like to hear from Mr. Al-Darawi with many interesting initiatives that you've shared with us in the previous intervention and plans for greening the urban sphere. How do you see the future prospects for renewable energy, and what can you say to the world about this? And in addition, as you are from Ministry of Investment, do you have any particular message for the Japanese companies who might be interested in investment? Thank you.
Thank you, Uchida-san, for your question. So Saudi Arabia's 2030 energy mix includes the creation of opportunities to generate around 59 gigawatts from solar and wind power projects. International companies, including the independent power producers, IPP, including Japanese IPP, will be most welcome to join and come to Saudi Arabia and invest in this project. We already witnessed Marubeni, one of the big Japanese companies, closing multi-billion-dollar deals in renewable energy in 2019. And we are witnessing right now even increased interest from Japanese and international companies alike. In addition to this development project of the 59, there is a localization requirement. And in Japanese, I think it's called Genshi Chotatsuho. So not only Japanese developers, but also Japanese manufacturers are also welcome to come to Saudi Arabia and utilize the industrial base that we already have, including very competitive utility prices and raw material, etc. This coming to Saudi will also give them access to the regional market as well, including the GCC and the MENA region, where we have also over 80 gigawatts of renewable energy opportunities being published more and more. In addition to these promising business openings, there are a number of important reasons why it will be smooth or why we encourage Japanese companies to visit Saudi Arabia. The first one, perhaps the strongest rationale, is having the solid G2G collaboration framework between Japan and Saudi. It was launched in 2017. It's actually an MOU, and we named this agreement Saudi-Japan Vision. There are multiple ministerial meetings happening on a yearly basis where we promote public and private sector investment projects and cooperation in order to increase economic cooperation between both countries. Another very important reason is having the business support schemes available from Saudi Arabia and from Japan to the Japanese companies trying to establish their business in Saudi Arabia. It covers a wide range of incentives and support, including but not limited to very competitive financing and financing of feasibility studies and doing business matching to help Japanese companies commercialize faster and access the market faster. The third one is very interesting for the energy sector, is having the agreement between Saudi Arabia and Japan for the joint credit mechanism, which was signed a few years ago. And this enables Japanese companies to invest in the energy sector and obtain carbon credit and also benefit the Saudi company as well. So it's a win-win and win situation. And at this moment, it's on the G2G level for the GCM, but I predict the near future, hopefully, we will see city-to-city collaboration to introduce these JCM schemes. Perhaps we can see Tokyo and Riyadh, for example, signing an MOU and working on the municipality level, how to enhance policies and introduce business matching event and work as a whole ecosystem between each other to maximize synergy between both countries. And here I want to say that the Ministry of Investment play an important role because we will be like the one-stop shop for Japanese companies interested in doing business for Saudi Arabia, where we work together with the Saudi public entities and Japanese public and private sector to jointly develop and market business opportunities and exchange policies and know-how and processing policies. And that's it. So it's very promising, and I couldn't be more happier being in Japan, working on supporting Japanese companies investing in Saudi, and who knows, maybe we can see Japanese companies investing in Japan, like the unleashed renewable energy sector. I believe there is bidding for the offshore wind project. We can see collaboration on multiple arenas, and looking forward to collaborate. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Ali Dalawi. I think it's important that the government-to-government collaboration can actually create enabling condition for the business to flourish in a direction of investment on this new renewable energy. And you've indicated maybe a possibility of city-to-city collaboration to further develop that kind of approach to nurture this kind of development through the form of collaboration. Thank you very much. So I would like to ask Ms. Miyake. So we've been hearing today mainly from local and national governments about their efforts to deploy renewable energy. But since you are from the private company, I would like to hear from your perspective, what kind of actions do you think in order to implement renewable energy at the scale that responds to the 1.5 degrees goal? I mean, we just had an example about this enabling condition created by government to government. But from your perspective, please share us your idea.
Thank you. Let me first introduce JCLP, Japan Climate Leaders Partnership, where I co-chair. This is a corporate network of companies who work towards carbon neutrality. And we currently have 200, a little bit less than, I think we have reached 250, but almost 250 companies from different industries. Total amount, the sizes, as you can see, and the members, as you can see with the logos. Next slide, please. The network actually was developed quite early in 2009, but it didn't really take off until recently, of course. But recently, it really attracted a lot of companies throughout the industry because the corporates need to be carbon neutral, and it's not something that they can do by themselves. So we needed more members, we needed more companies to come together to exchange views, exchange information, and also get together to make a louder voices towards from the demand side, because most of the companies are from the energy demanding sector. So we use electricity, we use energy, and we wanted them to be carbon neutral. So this is how we developed, and these are things that we do. We lobbying to the policy makers, and we do a lot of events to educate people, and we learn from each other. Next, please. But you also know the initiatives called RE100, where the companies are committed to be carbon neutral by 2030 or 2030. And this is, it's only some companies. It's not the older companies, but the companies, even with the companies who are in the RE100, you can see the lead line on the top shows the demand. This is the aggregation of the amount that for the RE companies only, but it still has a big discrepancies where the below yellow and the blue chart shows the amount that you can get or amount that you can expect to be able to get in 2003 in terms of renewable energies. So there's a big volume differences that where the demand and the supply is not matching up. So we need more renewable energies. That's the bottom message that in Japan, and we are very worried and concerned because as a corporation, if we wanted to be competitive, we have to have more renewable energy in this country. And if we can't do that, we have to relocate. We had a lot of talks about Saudi Arabia being the source of clean energy, Kuala Lumpur, source of clean energy. We need, as a corporation, we have to make a judgment. We have to make a decision at some point where to locate our factories, our offices, where do we do our businesses for the corporation to be clean. So is it going to be, where is it going to be? Can we stay in Japan? That's the question that we have to ask ourselves. Next slide, please. And when we talk about electricity, we just have to talk about, we can't just stick with the electricity we use currently. We have to electrify a lot of different sectors. A lot of sectors who currently does not use electricity, but they will convert their operation into using electricity. So we can't just talk about 100% cleaner electricity. We have to use more, we have to create more, produce more electricity to be able to cover the people who are going to electrify from now to 2030. So this all shows that we are short of clean electricity. And if we want to have a competitive nation in Tokyo, again, a competitive market where the industry can grow, the bottom line is we need more electricity. And that will be the key message from the corporation side to the local government and also the government as well. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Miyake. I think that's a bold statement, a very strong statement. It's not really about the question of enabling environment. The demand is here. We need to invest. Otherwise, we will lose competitiveness. It's very simple. So that's a very clear message. Thank you so much for that input. So now I would like to move on to Ambassador Paquet. So EU is also very actively working to expand the role of local governments in climate action. And what is EU's perspective on the importance of cities in terms of expanding renewable energy projects across EU?
Yeah, Toko, thank you very much. Can I just also echo what you just said and Emika, what you said? Our investments in renewable energy and our broader climate change-driven transformation is also about our competitiveness and our security of supply. So we're not only driven by climate policies, which of course are the overriding objective, but it has major other benefits, and in terms of competitiveness particularly, powered by renewable energy in 2030 for many production processes. We hope to lead with our clean tech and beyond. Now, yes, I think you need action at all levels. You need, of course, the international action. COP28 will be really important. The European Union, by the way, is teaming up with the presidency of the United Emirates on a pledge to triple renewable energy by 2030 and double energy efficiency by 2030. So I very much hope that this will be a very large success because it's a no-brainer, as we are discussing, and also economically, this tripling of installed renewable energy capacity is absolutely within reach globally. So it needs to be, we need action at international level, you need action at national or European regional level, as I've presented before. But in fact, most of the action is happening in industry and in local government. This is where implementation takes place, and I think this is well understood by cities like Kuala Lumpur, Tokyo, and New York, to take Mike Bloomberg in 15 years ago, and very much also at European Union level. And I think what ICLEI does, local governments for sustainability, is from that point of view absolutely critical. And I'm not saying this because you invited me, but because this is really the framework within which cities can upgrade their knowledge, and with the knowledge their ambition. So the more cities can be interacting on their own plans, and they are all, of course, adapted to local circumstances, the more they will collectively be able to get to the next level. In the European Union, we are, of course, a driving force behind the Global Covenant of Mayors with many others, and behind ICLEI. But we also have European-level initiatives, and I would like to mention one because it has features which I think are quite relevant in this discussion, which is the city's mission aiming at carbon neutrality by 2030. Not 35, not 40, not 50, but 2030. So we put out a call for proposal at the end of 21, asking, are there cities in Europe which want to be part of that ambition to draw up plans and deliver on climate neutrality by 2030? Admittedly, with a bit of offsetting to make it credible. And we had more than 360 cities which came forward. I mean, this was a massive surprise. We didn't expect that success, representing more than 20% of the European population. So you are all out there. Local authorities are ambitious. They need this transformation and they want to drive it. So we have now 100 cities which were retained as part of that mission, and of course, connecting to many of the others which were interested to join. We had meetings here in Japan where we also exchanged some of the findings. I think what I would like to underline here is 2 or 3 features of that mission. The first one is to connect innovation and technology and deploy it. So there's a strong driver also on technology. Secondly, the cities are entirely systemic in their approach. So it's not about one dimension or the other. They look at the energy, housing, production, transportation, food systems in an as integrated manner as possible to produce systemic synergetic solutions. And they also look at climate change in its broader dimension of mitigation. Yes, that's the heart of the mission, but also adaptation. Because European cities, all cities, are so much impacted now already, and some solutions on mitigation and adaptation come together, particularly nature-based solutions, trees, parks, water management, all that makes a lot of sense. And the last feature I would like to underline is that this is done with the inhabitants of the cities. This was mentioned already by the Kuala Lumpur mayor earlier on. The idea of this mission is that the plan, the climate neutral plan, which is being drawn up as we speak, is done with citizens, not by the administration of the city in isolation, but jointly with inhabitants, because getting to climate neutrality so fast means not just deploying technology, it also means changing the way you live in your city and you act in your city. And this is why you need full ownership, and therefore citizens-based policy design is at the center of that ambition. So not everyone will make it by 2030, that's clear, this is very difficult, but this mission will accelerate massively and create for other European cities, maybe beyond Europe, interesting, I think, lessons on what is successful and what is more difficult. So that's why I wanted to underline it, and I'm so grateful that there are more and more bridges between Japan and Europe, but also between Europe and many other continents in that effort. Thank you.
Thank you, Ambassador Paquet. So now I would like to share a video message from Ambassador Hatchigan again. The US government is working on to strengthen the role of cities as well, which is a topic being amplified in lead up to COP28 this year. Excuse me. The ambassador will tell us about her view in recognizing cities as important actors and strengthening their role at the coming COP. So please.
How can the federal level encourage innovation and ambitious action against climate change by cities and other subnational actors? I think the creation of my office is in and of itself a testament to recognition of the importance of the subnational level in a range of global challenges facing us all. I also think there is no better example than the Inflation Reduction Act, the IRA, that demonstrates how the federal level can support local action and innovation. As the most significant climate legislation in US history, the IRA will be providing the means for decarbonization for years to come. I know that you're also interested in our plans for COP28. I'm delighted to report that as the subnational diplomacy team, we have collaborated with several mayoral networks for an event at the US Center during COP28. This event will showcase cities' varied efforts to decarbonize and increase resilience to climate change. We hope it will be a great opportunity for peer learning. We hope to see some of you there. Indeed, because I've been emphasizing the importance of cities engaging globally, because the more we listen to one another, the more learning we can do, and the stronger our collective response to the climate crisis becomes. We believe COP28 will be a great event for this mutual learning, and my team and I look forward to connecting with you there, if not before. Thank you very much for all of your time and this great event and the opportunity to share my words. Thank you.
Thank you, Ambassador Hachigen. So lastly, I would like to hear from Vice Governor Nakamura. So last year, Governor Koike was the only local government head participating in the World Leaders Summit at COP27. So please deliver a message about the lead up to this year's COP and Tokyo's future initiatives, please.
Thank you. In March of this year, the IPCC reported that global greenhouse gas emissions should be reduced by 60% by 2035 in order to limit temperature rise to 1.5 degrees Celsius. Along with the aim of realizing the zero-emission Tokyo by 2050, Tokyo will contribute to reductions consistent with the 1.5 degrees goal to fulfill its responsibility as one of the world's largest consumers of resources and energy. The key to achieving that is the massive introduction and supply of renewable energy as well as further energy efficiency improvement. In June of this year, the Tokyo Metropolitan government set up an expert board to accelerate the social implementation of renewable energy. Ms. Miyake has been participating in the board. The board has held discussions about the thin, light, and flexible perovskite solar cells developed by Japanese technology, as well as offshore wind power green generation and ocean energy. By leveraging the advice and suggestions of experts, we will make the most of Tokyo's potential and ensure the broad implementation of renewable energy. At COP27 last year, Governor Koike participated in several meetings attended by the leaders of various countries to communicate Tokyo's efforts for decarbonization to the world, including the use of green hydrogen, for example. At COP28, held in Dubai this year, the Globe Stocktake will, for the first time, review global progress toward achieving the objectives and long-term goals of Paris Agreement. Together with the speakers and everyone watching the forum, we would like to keep forging ahead with these concrete actions and create a sustainable society. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Vice Governor Nakamura. So unfortunately, we are coming to an end, and I apologize for bad management of this session. The time is over the planned time. But anyway, I think everyone is agreed that every bit of the presentation and words that we heard today was very valuable for us to move forward and also leading up to COP28. So before we finish with the closing speech, I would like to ask Vice Governor Nakamura to give us some words to wrap up the panel discussion. So, Vice Governor, please.
Thank you, Mr. Uchida. Today, all of the participants showed their advanced efforts effectively promoted captivating in their regional characteristic for the purpose of implementing renewable energy. I'm glad to hear about their determination to accelerate the implementation and the intention to collaborate with Tokyo and Japan. Thank you very much again. I look forward to strengthening this cooperative movement with all of the participants. Together with the members invited here, I would like to express our commitment to taking the lead in the world through effective initiatives as a joint message for accelerating the implementation of renewable energy. COP28 will begin in the UAE at the end of next month. It has been very meaningful to hold this forum at a time when interest in climate change is increasing worldwide. We'd like to actively disseminate the content of today's discussion or as an international occasion. Time to act. Now is the time to accelerate actions. Let us all work together and combine our effort to take on the crisis in front of us. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Vice Governor Nakamura. And with that speech, the wrap-up of the panel discussion, I think, and I'm pleased to invite perhaps the most appropriate person to give today's closing speech, His Excellency Mr. Shihab Ahmed Al-Fahim, Ambassador Extraordinary and Plenipotentiary of the United Arab Emirates, to give today's closing speech. Ambassador, please.
Thank you very much, Excellencies. I'll try to be short so not to go much over. With COP28 being less than a month away, I think it's very important for us to come and see the results of the first global stocktake and where we are and how important it is for this session today to see how aligned we are when it comes to COP28. This is the time to show our commitment to address climate change, accelerate decarbonization of energy systems. The UAE has identified 4 key pillars of COP28: accelerating the energy transition, addressing climate finance, prioritizing people and lives, and underpinning everything with full inclusivity. The transition to renewables is indeed the pathway to a sustainable life and important for urban communities in energy decarbonization. It is also key to everyone to achieve net zero emission goals and to fight against global warming. We have felt it this summer, whether in Tokyo or in Sapporo also. The UAE, the first country to join World Green Economy Organization, committed to its energy transition through its Energy Transition 2050 initiative, aiming to increase contribution of clean energy in the energy total mix from 25 to 50% by 2050 and reduce carbon footprint of power generation by 70%. The energy strategy covers combination of renewables, nuclear and clean energy sources to meet the net zero emission plan outlined by the 2050 strategic initiative. We also have inline public investments of around $165 billion in renewables. The upcoming COP28 is an opportunity to focus on climate finance with a sustainable future. The International Energy Agency estimates that only 20% of clean tech investments is going to developing countries that make up over 70% of global populations. And the annual clean energy investment must triple by 2030, reaching 4.2 trillion with around 1.8 trillion going to developing countries. The UAE supports already green infrastructure and clean energy projects worldwide and has investments of more than $50 billion in renewable energy projects in 70 countries, and we're planning to increase it by another 50 billion by 2030. UAE and Japan have been strong partners against climate change, collaborating on various global platforms such as G7 climate change and G20 climate change initiatives. When it comes to action, I think all of us, especially when it comes to the city level, are taking the action one step forward, because this affects not only the UAE, Japan, or any other country. It affects everyone, and it affects each and every individual. We all have to make a difference. We all have to make a change. In COP28, we're planning to showcase this, and we're focusing on action and on inclusivity, because of how important it is for everyone to come together and to make a difference. We will not be able to sustain, but at the same time, we have to also be very pragmatic and very rational when it comes to energy transition, rather than unplugging from an energy system. We still need to keep our lights on, we still need the ACs, we still need to keep our energy infrastructure. But it means we need to keep moving much faster. The UAE started its energy transition 20 years ago. And we were somehow criticized back then that we have energy resources and we still went for the renewable energy sector. This is why we focused on hosting IRENA, and this year hosting COP, in order for us to make a difference and in order for us to make a change. So I hope to see everyone, and this is our focus on inclusivity for this year. So let's make a big difference. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Ambassador Al-Fahim, and thank you very much to everyone who have joined today's forum. So I would like to request one last time to give a big round of applause to today's participants. Thank you very much. And with this, I would like to bring this event to a close. So thank you very much for joining. Thank you.